Hello and welcome back, everyone. This week we are going to go into a concept that I've been having some conversations with people about, and there seems to be a lot of questions about this. Uh, Overplanning versus underplanning. Now, I was in a panel recently where plotting versus pantsing was discussed. Whether you're somebody that has really detailed outlines before you jump into the story writing process, or whether you just kind of get an idea and just roll with vibes for a while. And there's an argument back and forth between, not an argument back and forth, but there's definitely discussions about which one are you. Uh, Throughout this discussion, I kind of figured out that I was a hybrid of sorts, where I would kind of jump in, write a whole bunch, and then come back and try to be like, okay, how can I structure this? How am I going to make sense of everything that I've just put together? With over planning, are you still working on like the 15th language for a lost civilization in your world that may or may not ever show up in the story itself? Then you're probably over planning. Are you stuck in the middle of an edit and you don't even know where to go, what's not working, why it's not working, and you're honestly just tired of looking at the manuscript? Then you might have underplanned. Now, depending on the project, I've definitely been guilty of either one of these. Again, being a hybrid writer, there is importance in both sides. If you're on a writing team, outlines are usually pretty standard, so you don't really get to jump off the rails. And if you do, you come back with a lot of scenes that are going to get cut, a lot of dialogue that's going to be chipped away. Just be ready for that. Also, in the editing process, be ready for lots of things to get cut anyway. There's the adage in the writing community of kill your darlings, which is not everything you write is sacred. There are a lot of things you're going to have to cut, things that just don't work. And it wasn't wasted time. It would be like going to the Olympics and thinking that all the exercises you did before competing were wasted time. No, all those exercises were important. And all the stuff that you wrote, even if it got cut, made the story better. Because you understand the world better, the characters, the story is culminating in a strong direction, and it's more cohesive. And the things that you get rid of that didn't serve that cohesion, I've got another workshop that I do about the North Star, about controlling idea and central question and things like that, and that's in another video. But for this, we'll stick to overplanning and underplanning. So you want to kind of find that sweet spot that serves you getting writing done. Because that's the other thing with overplanning, is that research and world building and giving these really detailed backgrounds to your story, while yes, it does add texture, at a certain point it becomes procrastination. Will the things that you are writing show up in the story? Will they be thematic in how they show up in the story? Will there be relevance to all these different lists and backgrounds? And don't get me wrong, I am a historian, by background. My degree was in history. I've been a folklorist. I've studied really heavily into mythology and religions and a whole bunch of other things. So I get the urge to get lost in the rabbit hole of research and see where it takes you. And it can take you to some really fun places, I'm not going to lie. And there will be ideas that will occur to you while you're researching. But you don't have to put all of that in this story. You can put that in the next story. You can put that in something later on in the anthology. But right now, you want to get things done. You want to have stories that you can get out there. And there's this saying in the business world of like, you want to get about 80% done and then launch. Now, there's some people that probably have conniption fits on just hearing that said. But I think writers tend to fall into the valley of perfectionism, and a story's never going to be perfect. It's a story. And if you think about it, a lot of our favorite stories have been absolutely ripped apart by reviewers, by YouTubers, by people giving panels and workshops that are like, here's the big things about Star Wars that doesn't work, or Lord of the Rings, or Harry Potter, or what have you. And the critiques that they give might be completely accurate, but had those authors just tweaked and tweaked and tweaked, and I mean, Tolkien kind of did. He took, 17 years to finish the Lord of the Rings? But if they just spent all that time tweaking and never releasing anything, we would have never gotten those wonderful stories. And sidebar, a lot of the extended world of Lord of the Rings, or not Lord of the Rings, of Middle Earth from Tolkien, we got that from his son, who went through his father's voluminous piles of notes to put together, Berion and Luthien and the Fall of Gondolin and the History of Middle Earth series. So the reason why we know all this extended lore, it was not ever put together in a digestible format for the public. I mean, it was, from what I've read, it was notes stuffed in drawers. It was, little bits in this book and that book. And the way Christopher Tolkien he attacks it in a very academic way. So he'll even talk about like, oh yeah, this word was used earlier on, and then the name was changed to this over here. It's a dive to get into, but unless you've got offspring that are going to spend 50 years of their lives putting all of your notes together, you might want to pare down. So, and I'm not saying rush your project. There's these people that are like, oh, you need to be releasing a new novel every 3-4 months. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to, when I hear people say about how quickly they've written a book, it does make me pause a little bit, being the type of writer that I am. And maybe they're writing great stuff and they're able to get it out in 6 weeks. I don't know. I have not had that experience. However, for overplanning, at a certain point, build the world, build the setting, and I might do a separate just over-planning video after this one, but find your jump-off point, find your true north, and go in that direction. And just to kind of recap, so when I say your true north, the one thing that encapsulates your whole story, the sort of heart and soul of the story that you're trying to tell, and there's a lot of different names for it. Again, controlling idea and central question are two different ways to approach it, but essentially a statement that gives you, and it's not a theme, there are a lot of different themes that you can explore throughout the course of your story, but you want one central question. And a central question can be something like, what are we willing to give up to acquire the thing we want the most? And that story can be a romance, it can be a tragedy, it can be a dark drama, it can be a comedy, but that question is going to inform every scene of the story, whether it's a screenplay or a book, and it's going to help you mold the narrative and cut away the things that you don't need. Anyway, having that to get you out of your over-planning stage, I mean, again, build a rich world, but don't be afraid to launch at a certain point. I've got somebody that I know and love dearly that has been working on a series for like 20 years, and I keep asking to be able to read it, and as far as I know, it's still unreleased, and I just don't want that for you, all right? I don't even want that for them. I want to read, I've been wanting to read that book series for years, and I don't know when that's happening. But if you are not wanting to spend the next 20 years just piling notes until they, become mountains in your office and you are not able to see through it, jump off, take a leap of faith, release the book. Okay? You can always expound on things in the next volume. The Hobbit was, a series of stories that he told his kids about these adventures of Bilbo, and he expounded on that universe afterwards. But he got the Hobbit out first, and then he kind of played around with it, and there was a setting that he very much fell in love with. He had a lot of lore that he put into that very quickly in The Hobbit, but then he gave himself Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion to expound upon that and to grow it. And there's a lot of fun in that process. But again, if you're wanting to be a writer that is building a following, that is getting sales, that is making this a viable career path, you've got to get stuff out there. On the underplanning side of things, I feel like there's a lot of people in the underplanning side of things, or the pantsers, that just kind of write off vibes. Like, all right, I'm wanting to tell a sad story that's a heartbreaking tragedy about two lovers that don't ever really get to spend quality time together. And that can take you pretty far. But then you've got to make some decisions about, what is the story you're telling. And if you can answer all of that up front, if you've got the cognitive skills to kind of put all that together and then just roll with it, and it can start with a scene. I tend to start stories with settings first. I kind of know where I want to set it first before I even know who's in the story, and then scenes will start to materialize in that place. So you could start with a setting, a couple characters, and again, a North Star, a direction of this is the type of story I want. This is the takeaway that I would like to have. This is the sort of message I want to bring out to the world. Now, when I say message, and I've talked about this elsewhere, and you'll see it in my other videos, that you don't want to preach. You don't want to moralize. I mean, unless that's all you want for your audience is other people that are going to moralize about that same thing. But if you want it to have a broader appeal, or if you want there to be a takeaway where people are really thinking about it, a good example of this is Avengers Infinity War. I remember leaving the theater and listening to people say things along the lines of, wow, Thanos kind of had a point. And Thanos in the movie is completely different from Thanos in the comics. All right, if you've read Infinity War, if you've read the series back in, what was that, like late 80s, early 90s, something like that, very different story, very different character. That was more about blind ambition for approval, and then what do you have, one, once you have literally everything, and two, you still don't get the approval. That's the comic. Movie was about balance, was about resource scarcity, was about kind of protecting people from resource scarcity and having that implode on itself, which is a concern that world leaders have discussed. I'm not going to get into that here. So in underplanning, give yourself your skeleton, give yourself your bare bones, again, have fun with the scenes that really speak to you. And if there are enough of those scenes to create a coherent story, by all means, keep rolling. If you can do that, I mean, Stephen King, as far as I understood, pantses most of his stories. So if this is something that makes sense to you and you're not stuck in that editing quagmire, by all means, carry on. However, if you are somebody that, you kind of find yourself in that editing stage, the sagging middle, and you're like, I don't know what to do. I am lost. One, I do consulting, so if you want to hit me up on that. But two, you want to start making some notes. What is the story I'm telling? What is happening? What's it about? And take a step back and try to look at it from more of a 360. Sometimes beta readers can help you. Sometimes just having a couple friends that you can grab drinks or coffee with and just spitball on this until it starts to click in your head. Julia Cameron had a exercise she called writing pages, where you just fill up 3 pages of just stream of consciousness. I would recommend trying that if you're really lost or stuck at a point in your storytelling. Just write about it, but don't. So pages, gosh, there's a lot of different things going on here, and there's a lot of different aspects to the writing skill set. Stephen King describes it as a toolbox, that you don't use all the tools in every single job, but you have them. So if I bounce around between different tools here, I apologize. What was I talking about? So go ahead and write your pages, get your group talk together, maybe get some some feedback from beta readers if you have some beta readers that can get back to you in a relatively short amount of time. I know everybody's got very busy lives and schedules, but find the story you're telling, find the crux of that, and then that will help inform all of your other decisions, and then your pantsing can be a lot more fun. If you have any questions on this video, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd be happy to hear back from you if there's some topics you'd like to see me cover in the future. I do ask you to like, subscribe, and feel free to hit out, go to GideonHodge.com or my Patreon to check on other things I'm doing, or if you'd just like to be involved, we would love to have you. Your sponsorship and support is what helps keep all of this going. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.